Thank you for watching Price Points. Today we're going to talk about military recruitment and what we can do in our community to help support the mission of our men and women in service. I have with me today Brigadier General John D. Klein and also Rick Dwyer, Executive Director of Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities, and also Drill Sergeant David Flannery. Anxious to talk to you, and also Private First Class Richard Olu Jordan. General, talk to us about today's Army and what people can expect if they join.
Okay, first of all, thanks for the opportunity, Mayor. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of paint the atmospherics of what's going on right now in recruiting. For those that may not be aware, the United States Army is probably going to fall a little bit short on recruiting this year. And so our team of experts, the senior leaders within the Army, we're all trying to figure out what has changed over the last 20 years. And if you don't mind, I'll kind of step us back a little bit. We're all familiar with 9/11. Post 9/11, given the security requirements, what you saw across all of our installations was us kind of securing our gates a little bit more. We were very concerned about the security of vehicles coming in and the like. And so we kind of hardened our facilities a little bit. And over time, we kind of became more and more distant from our communities and our families that are outside of the gates. And recruiting wasn't an issue because, as you can recall, after 9/11, the lines outside of the recruiting stations were a mile long. Everybody wanted to get into the fight. Well, as time progressed, that started to dwindle a little bit, and the generation changed a little bit. And America got fatigued, we believe, given the prolonged wars that we were in. And so we started to work a little bit harder every successive year in terms of recruiting the force. Well, this year, we're probably actually going to fall short. And that is despite tremendous efforts from our recruiting force that's out there and the initiatives that are going on. And I won't quote numbers today, but they might stagger you how short we might fall. So what's so important about events like this is providing the opportunity for soldiers like me and these two fantastic individuals over here to your left, the opportunity to kind of tell their story. And the story might surprise you. If you envision movies like Full Metal Jacket and Stripes, and although very popular during their day, and some of us may have seen an Army that was like that, to be quite frank. Yeah. And I won't date anybody sitting at the table here, but that is not our Army today. It is far from it. We have an all-volunteer force right now, and that is strategic. If you think about many of the other countries that we work with side by side, or nations that are out there, many don't have an all-volunteer force. Every soldier that's in our Army, for that matter, Navy, Marine, Airmen, they're all volunteers. And the reason why that's strategic is because our fighter raised their right hand on their own and decided that they were going to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Other countries are compelling their youth to do that, and so their will to fight, their desires are different. We can never lose that. And if we don't ever want to have to go back to a draft, and I'm not suggesting that a draft is anywhere in the conversation anywhere, we have to be able to sustain this all-volunteer force. And that comes, I think, with educating the population out there. It's believed that about 75% of the American population is completely unfamiliar with the Army, unless they think about movies like I just described. And so the reason why I brought folks like Drill Sergeant Flannery here is because if you have this vision of a drill sergeant with the brown round on and he is right in your ear and he's spitting at you and yelling at you, that is not the Army that we are. We are completely values-based, and we take great pride in educating our youth through positive leadership, building up people of character that are competent in their tasks. And I can go on, I know, and I'm running here a little bit, but I've got to be able to articulate to the American population and really to the Newport News area that we are very, very fond of, that should anyone in their family want to decide to join America's greatest team, it's not like Full Metal Jacket, I promise you.
So what is it like to be a drill sergeant in today's Army?
Well, sir, being a drill sergeant in today's Army is probably changed from back in the days that you were in, or or maybe Brigadier General Klein when he came up. We're all volunteer force, as he said, so we're focused on building the individual and turning them into a better person. So our focus is on assisting them and improving them and building their character rather than breaking them down and kind of degrading them and making them not want to be a part of us. So.
Sounds good. And Private, why did you enlist?
I enlisted mainly for college benefits. That was my main motivation for enlisting, but it was more than just the educational benefits for me. It was always, like the Brigadier General said earlier, like a sense of purpose almost. Like I wanted to do something bigger than just myself. I wanted to expand my horizons and see the world, different from just a small, sheltered place that I grew up in. And it seemed like the right thing to do for me. Like it seemed like it was almost calling to me, and so I decided to listen to the call, and that's why I enlisted.
That's great. And Rick, you were in several years, and now you're in a position of leadership in the community. Talk to us about your experience and how it's affecting you now.
Sure. So I spent 20 years on active duty in the Air Force and retired about 6 years ago now, right out of Langley Air Force Base. And my family and I really enjoyed being in this area and being stationed here. And so we decided to stay and put some roots down because this community is so welcoming. And that's important to General Klein's point about recruitment these days. You recruit the soldiers, but all the services will say they retain the families. And the supporting cast that's in the community, whether it's spouse hiring, public school education, those are all things that make a difference in retaining those service members once the military brings them in the doors. Because if their family life, their spouse can't find a job, or if they don't like the schools that are around the military installations where they're stationed, they're going to vote with their feet and they're not going to stay in.
Okay. Now, General, back in the day, when I was in last century, as I was so early.
Way back, right.
I was in a class of 200 officers, and I was one of 4 blacks. How has that changed?
So within the Army, we are representative of America, okay, in terms of percentages if you want to go down that path. That's not how we recruit. I just share that because you asked the question in terms of how we look. And that's with all minorities. I think we are somewhere in the 25% or something like that, specifically because you asked the question about African Americans. And then Asian Americans, it's a smaller percentage. But we're fairly representative. And within the officer corps, it's pretty close to what you would see in America. What we're trying really hard to do, though, within the Army, specifically with African Americans, is we want everybody to have the opportunity to achieve the highest ranks. And so there's an initiative that's been out there to make sure that we are introducing African Americans into the combat arms branches, because there's a tendency for, no matter what race you are, to want to migrate to maybe different branches that are outside of combat arms. Not everybody's excited about maybe picking up a rifle or driving a tank or whatever the case may be, flying a helicopter, whatever the case may be. But we know that within those branches, you have the highest potential to achieve the highest levels within our Army. And so we've made a concerted effort to make sure that we are recruiting and educating all of our members within the Army the advantages of the combat arms. But specifically, we are encouraging a lot of the African Americans to get into the combat arms because we need that balance also at the highest ranks. And sometimes we're criticized at the highest ranks. The Army has done very, very well in that respect. If you were to look across all the generals within our Army, we are very, very representative, and we're very proud of that. In fact, the next commanding general coming here, TRADOC, I don't know if you know General Gary Brito. He came out of the Maneuver Center of Excellence. He's going to pin on his 4-star. He's going to take over here at TRADOC. Phenomenal officer.
Outstanding. Now, also I noticed if we have an affair on base, it's now not the officers club, it's just the club. How has that changed? Because when I was in, you had 2 clubs.
Yeah.
You had officers club and NCO club.
Yeah, no, that's changed actually probably 20 years ago, I think. I don't know. I think we had a little bit of haves and have-nots, but we didn't necessarily have the best reputation with officers clubs because sometimes they would get a little rowdy, and then there was a time when drinking and driving was you know, it just wasn't an issue. I mean, it wasn't something that we pursued unnecessarily. Right. And so when we started, as a country, started cracking down on that, that kind of changed the state of affairs out there. And so, honestly, there was probably there was a lot of good that came from Right Arm Nights and events like that in terms of team building, but we were also glamorizing and promoting something that was less desirable, because the after effects of some of those events were, you know, they could get a little rowdy. And installations just decided that, hey, let's tone that down a little bit, and let's focus on just being a little bit more of a professional organization. So that's when we kind of broke away from both an officer and NCO club. It just became a installation club, if you will.
Okay. Private, if you would, tell me about a day in your life and what it is you in the future are planning to do.
Do you mean a day in my life here at AIT?
Yes.
Well, we usually I get up at 4:30. We have to be downstairs at around 5:15 for PT in the morning. We do that up until 6:30, where we go upstairs, go get changed, conduct personal hygiene, and then we come back out. We form up. We form a formation. And then the student leadership, which is like leadership amongst ourselves, we kind of organize ourselves, report to the drill sergeant, and we march over to the DFAC, where we eat morning chow. Right from morning chow, we form up outside again, and student leadership once again organizes it, and we walk over to school. So I'm from Bravo Company, and there's 3 different MOSs there. So there's the 50 Deltas, the 15 Novembers, and the 15 Yankees, and we all have separate hangars. So the 15 Deltas, we walk over to our hangar. The Yankees do the same. They get on a bus, actually, because it's slightly it's farther than where the Deltas and the Novembers stay. So the 15 Yankees get on their bus.
These are all aviation mechanics, by the way, he's talking about.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was going to ask
Well, we go to school, and then we do the same thing for break. We form up outside. We go get chow, go back to school, come back, and come back outside our company area where we get our packages, our mail. We handle our personal businesses, and then we have some personal time to handle whatever we have to for the day, and we do it all over again.
So what do you hope to do with this in this? Where is it you want to be in the Army?
I want to be in the highest ranks possible. And so my main reason for joining the Army was I was looking for an organization that could help my natural skills, something that could help me achieve something better for myself. So my hope is that the Army can help me as I help the Army to further my natural skills and become something better of myself. So within the Army specifically, I plan to commission as an officer eventually. Maybe my goal is like a cybersecurity officer, because I'm more like tech oriented. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm trying to go to.
I would expand on that, Mayor, too, is that I think it's important for the audience to know is that, you know, so PFC Olu Jordan, I mean, obviously he's very competitive. So for those that don't know, here at Fort Eustis, Virginia, we train all aviation mechanics here. We also have, we joke, but it's true that we have the Army's Navy is here as well. So if you're unfamiliar, I would invite, you can get with your local organization. We're now opening our gates quite a bit more now. So if it's the schools, the churches, whatever the case may be, if you have not had the opportunity to see Fort Eustis, please reach out to us, and I'll be glad to coordinate and escort a tour of the installation. And you can go see some of the larger ships that we have in our Army. You can tour the aviation maintenance schoolhouse that we have. There's lots of simulators that are in there. We have fuselages of all the different airframes that we have in there. We've got it. All of our cadre are walking around, and you can sit down with one of our soldiers and see what they're doing and have have a hands-on experience. We also have a 4-star headquarters there with the Training and Doctrine Command, and so General Funk has been very gracious of his time as well, has invited folks into his office and sat down with them to kind of share his story and what we're doing there at Fort Eustis. But, you know, we're setting up this individual without question for success in the fact that he's getting a very valuable trade, whether he decides to stay in or not. What he's getting, one of 150 MOSs, by the way, 50 jobs that you can do, from being a dental hygienist to being a lab technician to being an aviation mechanic, being a pilot.
Define MOS for those.
Yeah, military occupational specialty, and thanks for asking the question. If we go too Army on you, we'll lose everybody there. But yeah, that's just a simple way of saying job, basically. So those are the jobs that we have. So that's a very highly marketable skill set that you're learning, and that's going to do well by you. And if you want to be in the cyber world, we have that too. We have on Fort Gordon, Georgia, is the home of our Cyber Center of Excellence. We have an entire school down there dedicated to developing the future hackers, if you will. Yep, we have those in the Army, right. And that's either on defensive or on offensive. So it's just incredible opportunities that are out there.
So what should I ask this gentleman here?
I mean, ask him what I think it would be. You tell your story of why you joined the Army.
Well, sir, joining the Army, so going back to around high school times, 9/11 happened while I was in high school, and then immediately upon graduating, a lot of my friends decided to join the military and go over to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I did not go. It was something I kind of regretted at the time. I thought growing up, I always wanted to join the military, but I never pursued it. So I finished high school. I didn't go to college, despite like a couple classes here and there at a local community college. But I pursued the trades, and I got into being an electrician. And I worked as an electrician for about 8 years. Opened my own business. Was successful in that area, and was happy. But I started to think about when I got older, would I have any regrets with my life? So I didn't want to be, getting ready for retirement and climbing up the ladder and being like, this is all I did with my life. So I walked down to the recruiter's office and started talking to a recruiter, and I was all about it, and I was instantly hooked. And at that time, I had no immediate family members in the military, so my family didn't support my decision. They had the envision that I was just going to go off to some distant land and never come back, or be treated like Full Metal Jacket and those kinds of ideas of how the military is. And I tried to tell them that wasn't the case anymore. And they basically said my recruiter was feeding me lies. But I chose to ignore their recommendation and join anyway. Since joining, I've never regretted any decision. I've traveled across the world with my family. We've been very happy with the way the military has treated us. On top of that, I got my college degree in business, and that was something I never thought I was going to do, but the opportunity was there, and the Army definitely gave it to me. So I was able to be, in my eyes, successful.
And you've got to tell the story about your mom and the anxiety that she had when you went to school. Tell your story about your mom and then how she feels about you now.
Right. Well, I wanted to join the Army. My family didn't want me to join the Army, especially my mom. She had much apprehension, reservations. She just so the idea of what the Army is what scared her, I guess. And I only have 3 siblings. I have 2 siblings. There's 3 in total. And I'm the last, so I'm kind of like her, I don't know what you would call that, but yeah. So she really didn't want me to join, but at the time I needed college benefits, and I really wanted to, that was something that I was passionate about joining, just right from time. And so after I met with my recruiter, I told her, hey Mom, I have to join this. This is something I really want to do, and she said absolutely not. I told my dad to try to talk to her, convince her, because to join, you need the consent of your parents. Even if you're over 18, there's still I forget what it's called right now, but you need the consent of your parents. And I wanted her approval if I was going to do it anyways. So after much convincing, I had to tell her I'm not joining infantry MOS, or I'm not doing the more dangerous things in the Army. I'm only doing this to the limit of what I can handle and what I can hope to achieve from it. So eventually, with much convincing, she let me go, and I enlisted. And I went through basic, and I remember the phone calls at basic. She would always like call me up and try to check on me. We had like one phone call every week because it kind of changed now from what it used to be. So I was able to communicate with her frequently. I told her like it's not hell, you know. I'm doing well. I'm alive. I'm doing some PT and I'm learning how to shoot a weapon. That's all I'm doing. And you know, it's kind of fun too at the same time. And she was the happiest person on Family Day. When my family came to visit me, she was the one smiling the most. You know, oh, my son's in the Army. She's doing all this, even though she didn't want me to join at first. So eventually she appreciates the fact that I'm there, and she's like my biggest supporter now.
Well, those of us who have served often fall back on what we experience, and we all have stories, and it's helped us, I think, in the future. And Rick, tell us a little bit about the organization you're now leading and its effect on the peninsula.
Sure. So I'm the leader of the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance, which is a mouthful. So we're better known as HARUMFA, just because it's much easier to say. But we're an organization of public-private partnership that exists to support the military and federal presence here throughout Hampton Roads. Our mission is to attract, retain, and grow federal assets to the region. So we do that by working with installation leaders like General Klein and all the other installation leadership around Hampton Roads to help them get after issues that are, anything that could be a potential roadblock to them being completely successful in their missions. We work with obviously local officials like yourself, state officials, or our federal congressional delegation to make any of those kinds of changes that can like I said, help those federal partners be successful in their missions. We want to be a welcoming community. We want Hampton Roads to be a station of choice for all the services. And in fact, that when people like myself, eventually either separate or retire out of the military, we want them to stay here and call Hampton Roads home.
Great. General, tell us a little bit more about what it is we as a community can do to support you, what it is we can do to learn more about you, and what it is you envision of how the military is affecting and helping us in our area.
Okay, so to your first question, probably the most powerful thing that the audience can do is have an open mind about serving your country through the Army. We are your Army. We're the America's Army. It's not this is not we versus they. So, and we have to have a filled Army in order to conduct the mission that our country expects of us. But so I would, A, keep an open mind. 2, I would help tell our story out there. It's a very positive story. Without question, the reason why we decided to bring these 2 great soldiers on the panel today was to, A, tell their story, but hopefully dispel some rumors out there. And so we can probably break through some of the unknown that exists out there with the population. I think I shared with you before, one of the challenges we have, and there's some great organizations doing great things out there, like the Wounded Warrior Project or the Tunnels of Towers. But this is somewhat of a challenge for those of us that are still in uniform and for America's Army, because it portrays a picture that every soldier's got PTSD, or they're going to lose a limb in combat, or they're going to lose their loved one entirely, and so we have these organizations that are out there that are doing great work, but it's kind of tough on the recruiting scene when you're seeing a Wounded Warrior commercial and then the next minute it's like, be all you can be. So probably the largest thing is just whether you're in the schools, the churches, on the ball fields, if you're a coach, a teacher, a clergyman, whatever the case may be, keep an open mind and help tell our story that your Army has got an unbelievable legacy and history that is all values-based. It is all volunteer, and our ranks are filled with just phenomenal people. In terms of the contribution to this community, well, it's significant, and I think you're familiar. So I'm the senior commander here at Fort Eustis, but if you look at Joint Base Langley-Eustis, well, it's $3.4 billion in terms of contribution to the local community, and that's not. We've got about 20,000 on Fort Eustis that are either active military or civilians or family members, and they are in the local schools here. We are in the churches. Our kids are all playing together. You know, Newport News is our home. It's our family right now. I think I have a sign in my house that says, you know, home is where the Army assigns me. So home for me right now is absolutely Newport News. And we're proud to be a part of this community. I have had the opportunity to serve. I have moved 18 times in my career. I think 19 actually, but one of them was just here locally on the post. So I've served in a variety of awesome neighborhoods out there that have great relationships with the surrounding communities. This one is right at the top. It's absolutely right at the top. And I think it's because we do have a huge Navy presence here, and we do have an Army and an Air Force presence that's significant here. And because there are so many retirees that are within the community, but it is such a welcoming community. And no matter where you go, certainly if I'm in uniform like this, folks will go out of their way and they'll come over to shake my hand, and the same thing will happen to these soldiers and say, thank you for your service. The thing I would like to add to that is thank you for your service, and hopefully the speech balloon that's above their head changes from thank you for your service, but you know, right now currently a lot of them are thinking, but don't take my son or daughter within your ranks. The hope is thank you for your service, and how do we learn more about what it is that you do? And I've got a grandson or a granddaughter that might benefit from, you know, joining your rank, joining your team. It's a great team. I've got no regrets. I went to basic training and had a drill sergeant who was acting a little bit differently than they do probably today, 34 years ago. And I remember to this day, Drill Sergeant Reynoso and Drill Sergeant Matthias. Those were my two drill sergeants. And I remember their names today, 34 years later, because of the unbelievable positive impact that they had on my life. Had it been a negative, I would have flushed their names from my memory, but it was hugely positive. And that was 34 years ago. It may have been a little different when you went through, but I share that story because it's hugely influential, what these NCOs are bringing to our force. And I'm a better person because the drill sergeants that I experienced so many years ago. And it's largely the reason why I'm still in uniform today.
Speaking of uniform, I happen to notice this is kind of a flashback. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay, so this is the Army Service Green uniform. Dates back to, we just brought this back recently. It dates back to the World War II era. So if you look at you know, old pictures of Marshall and Eisenhower and everybody in those, you'll see our officers and our soldiers that are wearing a version of this uniform. My dad used to criticize that the Army, because my dad's a career Marine, by the way, yeah, and I jumped ship, but he would say, you know, why is it the Army is always changing their uniform? Why don't you stick to tradition? You know, the Marines, they keep the same uniform, the few, the proud, and he has a point there. And I share that story because when the Army was deciding to come back with this uniform, I was working in the Pentagon at the time, and I thought, here we go again, we're going to change uniform. We were wearing the pastel colors, as you remember, for a while. Okay, there was nothing good about those. And then we went back to our blues. So I thought, okay, we're going back to tradition. The blues date back to the Civil War era. And the reason why the pants are a lighter color than the jacket in the blues is because they didn't wear their jacket when they were horseback in the cavalry days back in the Civil War era, so their pants got faded. So we kept that tradition. I thought that was cool. But then we still have our blues, but then we brought this uniform back. And I got to tell you, when I go around and I talk to veterans today, they love this uniform. This uniform, when you see it, you can tell it's a soldier. When you wore the blues, sometimes I would be asked what precinct I was with, you know. And nothing against the police, but I mean, you kind of look a little bit like a policeman. So we were struggling, I think, with our identity a little bit. And so I'm proud to wear the Army Service uniform here in its green fashion, and I think it looks just great.
Well, thank you, General. Is there anything anyone else wants to say, that burning issue you want to talk about, or?
Sir, I think it's important to note how many jobs we have in the Army, and that it's not all about being out on the front lines. There's plenty of opportunities out there to gain some valuable, like, work ethics and knowledge. For instance, PFC Olu Jordan here is training to be a powertrain mechanic on a helicopter. So he can go work at facilities like Boeing and Airbus and different you know, airframes and And there are just a multitude of opportunities out there for him outside of the Army should he choose to get out, but he can use the Army as a tool to gain those abilities that maybe he couldn't get outside without the military's help. So I think that's just important to add.
Great.
The only thing I would add, Mayor, is I'll put down this to the 150 jobs thing. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits just for a second. The benefits of, and it's really all services for that matter. Whether you join the Army or any other service, just a reminder to everybody the unbelievable benefits that come with serving your country. And I'm not talking about just in terms of values and character and the legacy that comes with it. I'm talking about the paycheck is pretty good. I'm talking about full medical, full dental for your entire family, a supplement to pay for the housing, whether you live off of an installation, on the installation, the Army covers the cost of your housing. And that's based off of where you live out there. The fact that I can retire after 20 years of service, and I don't have to wait until I'm 65 or 67 to start drawing that paycheck. I could have retired 10 years ago at the age of 42, and I would be drawing basically half of the pay that I was getting while I was in the Army, starting immediately at the age of 42. In real dollars, when you take money like that, even here for Sergeant First Class Flannery, and a lot of folks don't know this, but when he hits 20 years as a senior non-commissioned officer, certainly it's more for an officer, but when Sergeant First Class Flannery, let's say he retires at the rank of First Sergeant, okay? He's a E8, and he hits 20 years and he gets out, and if he had come in and when he was 18 years old, he could retire at 38 years old. He starts drawing a paycheck immediately at the age of 38. When you accrue that money from age 38 to, let's say you live to the ripe old age of 88, we're telling well in excess of $1 million, closer to $2 million, for which he has to do absolutely nothing. And he can work back as an electrician again, doing whatever he wants to do. Meanwhile, this money is accumulating out there. The retirement plan is adjusted here recently just a little bit, but it's still hugely significant. A lot of folks don't realize what military retirement means. So I throw that out there because if you're just scratching your head on reasons why you want to join the Army, my old man shared with me one time, because I was thinking about getting out of 10 years, and he goes, this is before 9/11, and he said, have you considered the financial impact of this decision? You've already served 10 years, you could do 10 more years, what that might mean? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, let's just, and he laid it out just like I just did here for you in the audience. And I said, okay, that's pretty significant. And I don't have to wait for that money. I mean, you could just put that underneath the mattress and that grows. But so I don't necessarily want to harp on the financial pieces. This is about service to your country. This is about pride and service. This is about so much more than that. But I can't ignore the fact that there is that particular piece out there as well, and it's significant.
General, when I joined, I finished college, went through ROTC and all of that. How would you join today, and what ages?
So we take up to age 35 right now. If you want to join, I mean, first of all, what they didn't have when you came in was the internet. And so they didn't have it when I joined either. So I'm with you there. But yeah, they can go to goarmy.com. There's a lot of resources that are available on the internet. And then I would encourage you to contact your local recruiter. You can look up on the internet. You can Google it, Army recruiter near me kind of thing. And just go over there and visit them. A lot of times they're all co-located, got all the services that are together. I know when I did that, Dad and I, we just kind of walked down the line. And when I stopped at the Army, I saw a little video and I thought, yep, that's what I want to do, and off I went. But it costs you nothing to sit down with a recruiter and just get smarter on what all is involved to join our ranks. And if anybody needs help with that, I can, or if you want to address a larger audience, just let me know and I can bring a recruiter to you.
I want to thank you. And Rick, did you have something?
Mayor, I just want to, General Klein had mentioned a little bit earlier about the economic impact of joint base lane use as being $3.4 billion. I just want to emphasize, how important that is for this region writ large. The military and federal presence in this region accounts for about 40 to 45% of the overall regional economy, which rough figures, the regional economy is about a $100 billion economy. So 40 to $45 billion of that economy is predicated on Joint Base Langley Eustis, the Navy presence, NASA Langley, Jefferson Lab here in Newport News, all of these federal installations. So it's not only it's incredibly important to our economic health, but the support of this community is so important to the future of our armed services. The support that goes towards recruiting those service members and then retaining those families and keep them in the service to our nation is critically important, not only to our national defense, but again to the economic health and viability of this region. And more importantly, it's kind of part of who we are here in Hampton Roads, we like to say. Dating all the way back to the birth of our nation right here in Yorktown, right? Being a military community and being in support of our military is part of who we are, and we want to keep that going.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for your participation and knowledge that we're able to share to the community. I hope the community learned a lot. I know I did. And it's always good to be able to reflect upon what you've done and what you're doing. And we just want to thank all of you for your service and your dedication. And we know that you will forever draw upon those skills that you've learned in the service. And we wish you success in your future. And General, it's good seeing you again. And Rick, always, as my wife calls it, the alphabet meeting that I go to. But once again, we want to thank you, and thank you for joining us on Price Points, and we hope you will continue to support our men and women in service. Thank you.